Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You know, if you research the Civil War soldiers for long enough time, you'll begin to see patterns in their lives and in their war experiences. One of those patterns is with the soldiers that are in the ranks, the enlisted men. Normally, these guys come out of various places in life. They perhaps didn't have the benefit of a college education. They may have worked quietly, toiling on farmers or as farm hands, or working in cities and factory jobs, did not leave behind much of a paper trail, either before, during, or if they survived after the war. These soldiers are sometimes the hardest to get a sense of who they were as individuals and better understand the sacrifices that they made fighting for what they believed. And so that's a preface to the story I want to tell you today about this soldier here. And to get there, I want to take you to Virginia, to the Virginia and Tennessee Railroad. It was well protected against enemy attack, shielded by mountainous terrain and other natural barriers. It was guarded by Confederate troops. A 204-mile track ran from Lynchburg, located along the Blue Ridge foothills in southwestern Virginia, to Bristol in Tennessee. The Achilles heel of this 204-mile track was a bridge, a 700-foot wooden trestle covered by a tin roof. It spanned the New River. It was about 90 miles west of Lynchburg. The destruction of that railroad would deprive the Army of Northern Virginia, General Robert E. Lee's army, of much needed war materials from the Deep South, particularly needed in 1864 and in 1865. General Lee, he completely understood how important this stretch of railroad was. But he wasn't alone. So did the other side. Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant also appreciated how important this bridge was and how important the entire railroad was to supplying Lee's army. So, in the spring of 1864, in coordination with his campaign against Richmond and Petersburg, Grant put out some orders to Major General George Crook to raid the railroad. According to the orders, the main mission was this: to cut New River Bridge and the road 10 or 20 miles east. From there would be the most important work Crook could do. That was Grant's determination. So, on April 29th, 1864, Crook set out with 6,155 troops, organized in 3 infantry brigades and an artillery battery. Among them, Colonel Rutherford B. Hayes, a future U.S. president. He was leading the 1st Brigade. In that 1st Brigade was the 23rd Ohio Infantry. That regiment, the 23rd, all Buckeyes, 450 strong, included another future president, William McKinley. There was another man in the ranks, far less known than McKinley or Hayes, and he's pictured here. His name is Private Alfred West. He was born in Pennsylvania, wound up in Ohio, and joined Company B of the 23rd in the summer of 1861. He was patriotic. He was ready for action. He was ready to fight for the country. And he did. He participated in numerous operations and campaigns, including the Battle of Antietam in 1862. It's a good bet that Private West posed for this photograph. It's a carte de visite, or a paper photograph about the size of a modern trading card, while he was on furlough in October. It was about October of 1863. It's about the time his original term of service expired. And of course, patriotic as he was, he reenlisted. We see him here looking so much like the quintessential private soldier in the ranks. He's wearing a buttoned up vest. He's wearing a sack coat of 4 buttons. He's got a Western style civilian looking hat on, trousers, little hiked up at the bottoms, and he's got some brogans that are muddy. Classic look. He just looks like he could almost be a civilian with brass buttons. So there's West. About 7 months later, after that furlough, Alfred West and his comrades embarked on the Virginia and Tennessee Railroad raid. On May 9th, 1864, as the armies of the Potomac and Northern Virginia, that's Lee and Meade, tore into each other 200 miles east at the Battle of Spotsylvania, Crook and his command collided with a Confederate force about 1/3 their number at Cloyd's Mountain. It was a ferocious fight that lasted about an hour, and it ended in a rout of the Confederates. The victorious Union forces, Crook's forces, quickly captured nearby Dublin Station, it's a major Confederate supply depot and a camp of instruction for the recruits. Crook got it, but it came at a price. 688 casualties strewn about the vicinity of Cloyd's Mountain, including 125 men from the 23rd Ohio. West, he was on the casualty list. He was one of the 125 who were wounded during the action. Authorities in the regiment reported him simply as wounded in action, but they didn't record the nature of his injury. It was not good. It was a serious injury. He lay on the battlefield with other stricken soldiers until the evening of May 9th, when Union details loaded him and other movable wounded into ambulances and slowly made their way to the now Union-occupied Dublin Station. Another 200 men deemed seriously injured were left behind in care of a surgeon. The next day, on May 10th, Crook ordered Dublin Station burned to the ground. Medical personnel moved Private West and the other wounded to a nearby town of Newbern, where West and other wounded were captured. They fell into enemy hands. Meanwhile, George Crook and the rest of the command, they advanced on the New River Bridge. That was the goal, that 700-foot-long wood trestle. They tore up the tracks along the way. Once they got to the bridge and captured it, they got it at a long artillery duel and a short infantry fight. Union soldiers, after they took control of the bridge, they set the trestle on fire. The wooden structure became engulfed in flames in a snap, and it collapsed in a blaze into the New River. Left standing, however, were the undamaged metal piers. Efforts to knock them down with artillery firing cannon at the piers failed. The cannon shot bounced harmlessly off the metal with a piercing ring that could be heard by the soldiers. They were out of options. They didn't have any explosives with them, and they were low on supplies. So Crook and his command left for the 150-mile return march to their home base. They arrived safely on May 19th. Crook had died a day before of his wound, whatever that wound was. It proved fatal, dying not only of the wound, but as a prisoner of war. He was about 25 years old. He never got to see the New River Bridge, yet he played a role in it, in that fight at Cloyd's Mountain. That was part of the overall raid. That raid, this Crook's raid, went largely unnoticed by the public and the press. It was completely overshadowed by momentous battles in Eastern Virginia, all part of the Overland Campaign, where George G. Meade's Army of the Potomac was trying to get to Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. And of course, Lee putting up a fight along the Petersburg and Richmond line. Meanwhile, around the New River, the Confederates, they rebuilt the bridge. This time they used fire-resistant green timber. And before long, supplies rolled in from the deep south along that 204-mile trek, keeping Lee's army in supplies. The results of the raid, it did satisfy Lieutenant General Grant because he noted that it started on time and accomplished its basic objective. It slowed the Confederates down, but it didn't completely shut it off. So what of West? Young man, a farmer, just starting out in life, left behind almost no paper trail, some military records, and it's really about it. We know that he died a prisoner of war. He sacrificed his life so that the Union Army could buy a little bit more time and make a little bit more of a dent into Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.